Welcome to the Fight Cherry Podcast. I am your host, Big Bang Michael Lasky. I am here with Damon, soon to be the Demon Anderson. This is the show where we interview a first-time fighter who has never fought before. I've trained from inception, and we're just getting a good idea of what is coming up and what might be happening during a fight night and what might be going through a fighter's head in a situation like this. Damon, you have been training with me here at the Ome Combat Club for, I would say, approximately, 2.5 years?
I think it's been a little bit over 3, matter of fact, as I was doing the math on it.
A little bit over 3. I love it. Okay, cool. So what made you decide that you wanted to take a fight? Fighting is not something that normal people who are right in their head do, and you decided that you wanted to get locked in a cage and get punched in the face. What made you decide that that was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that went into it. Martial arts in general, specifically MMA with the UFC, has been a major passion of mine for quite some time. I've watched them with my mom and stepdad since I was, really young. They would have it on the TV, watching pay-per-view fights. And I would kind of tune in a little bit. But as I started my training, it kind of developed from just a hobby, a sport that I watched, and then decided I wanted to start training. I always knew that there was going to be this question in my head, like, do I want to fight or do I just want to train for self-defense or just to have that skill set and knowledge? I've always been competitive in my life, and I've always wanted to be athletic and kind of test myself in that area. So I started training, and it was never a real thought for me to start fighting. But as I developed a skill set and even watched one of my training partners, Michael Allen, fight, it was inspiring for me. I've seen some of your credentials, and I thought those were super cool. And of course, a little bit of peer pressure. Everybody in the gym like, oh, you're next. You're fighting next. You're the one that's next.
Was there peer pressure in the gym? I wasn't even aware.
A little bit, yeah. Mike and then Stacy and then Nikki. They're all kind of like, you're the next guy on the list. And I'm like, you know what? I've put in the work. Started training. This is a passion of mine. I want to do it like I see it in the sports. And on the TV. So I thought, let's give it a go. Nice.
It's such a cool place to be in martial arts from my perspective, because obviously, I've been doing this since I was 2, and obviously MMA hasn't been this big for all of my life. Mm-hmm. And it is really cool, just like that you have like local venues to where you can sign up to fight, and like that's insane. Back in the 90s and like the 80s and shit, like it wasn't a thing that you can do. You had to like get in a street altercation to be able to fight. But now we have a safe, secure environment where you can go to, and and your whole family is showing up. All your friends are showing up to watch you debut, and I think that that's amazing. Can you explain to me sort of, and not to get into your head or anything, but like the pressure of having not only fighting but also having everybody come to see you fight?
I think for me the pressure is on me. I kind of try to push out the idea of there's all these people watching.
Right.
I've been in sports competitions. I played baseball. Heck, I've played, everything from golf to bowling to baseball to basketball, football in front of other individuals throughout my whole life, just on a team. But to have all the lights on you, I think that's a different element. So I haven't crossed that bridge, and, and once we get there, I'll kind of.
Are you dealing with any of those nerves?
Not at this point.
Okay, good.
But I'm sure those will come up. Yeah.
Well, I'll be there to help you work through it.
Yep.
You're going to be fighting for Steel Fist Fight Night. At the time of recording, this is next week, March 14th. Utah's longest, biggest, best venue when it comes to amateur fighting. You are going to be debuting as Damon the Demon Anderson. Explain your nickname. How did you get that, and whether or not it's important to you?
Sure. Yeah, that nickname came in a couple different ways. There was a couple nicknames that I was playing around with, right, that I wanted to kind of choose from. And my whole life, Damon, for some reason, my first name, has been a challenge for people to say. Even in Hispanic culture, like my Spanish teacher used to call me demonio, which is demon in Spanish. And I would get, cashiers would write, demon because they don't know how to spell Damon on my calling out your In-N-Out burger. You know what I mean? So
I do it when I'm texting you.
Right.
For some reason, I think it's a D.
And so that's happened, and then I had a core group of friends way back in the day that would call me the Deem. So it was kind of short for Demon. And then I developed a nickname, D Money, which is what I go by on my Instagram handle. If I'm playing video games, that's my handle on there. So it was kind of between the Demon and D Money. And then I thought to myself, if I was to fight a guy and his name was D Money, or I was, going to fight a guy and his name was the Demon, which one would I be a little bit more, thinking like, okay, maybe not this guy. So the Demon was it. And then we kind of developed that name here in the martial arts gym as well. And it stuck. So that was the right fit.
Yeah. I have to say, I agree. I think I'd be much more terrified of fighting a demon than D Money.
Right.
To be fair.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's cool. That's cool. As far as prepping for a fight, there's a lot that goes into a fight. I'm sure there was a lot that was surprising to you, being like a fan of the UFC, of what goes into prepping to fight versus what you might have expected as just kind of like a fan of fighting. What would you say the hardest thing has been in prepping for this fight?
Sure. I think for me, the most difficult thing, of course, the physical side of a fight camp is not to be underestimated. I went into this, looking at some of the guys that either fight professionally even, or some of the guys that train, some of the guys that fight for Steel Fist and other organizations. And then I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, gosh, you know what? Like, I'm in pretty good shape. I stay in the gym often. I eat
generally
healthy,
a fit guy,
yeah, and very athletic and competitive. So I was like, you know what, this shouldn't be that difficult. But it was shocking how some of these trainings went, and it was just an eye opener, to the point of like, wow, the training that I'm doing there is much different than training from fighting.
Right.
So that was hard, but the most difficult part for me has been the mental game, for sure, and it has it's everything from me being a foodie, and just wanting to eat every pizza I see, even though I stay fit and I stay in the gym, I'm in the gym so that I can eat all the crap food. But,
right. That's why we work out, so we can eat like shit.
Correct, yeah. And that's been difficult, right? So I dream about cooking food, I dream about eating food, but then the mental preparedness, for not just from the weight cut, but then, how am I going to perform? All these people, right? So there's just a lot of different elements that I find myself working through every single day.
What weight did you start at before camp?
I was originally at 187.
You're at like 187.
Kind of
you were really fit 187 for sure, but you were
Correct.
187, and you're going to be fighting at
170.
170, so welterweight. Nice.
Yep.
So essentially, you lost what, like 15 pounds over the course of
15 to 20 pounds. Yep, and there wasn't a lot of fat to shed anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? So just cutting down.
So we found it either way.
We found it either way. Yeah, it was calories, and that's what it was. So.
I love it. The fight game is a mental game, as you were explaining earlier. There's a lot that goes into it mentally, and a lot of people don't understand that it's not just getting in here and putting time on the mats. It's also about having yourself mentally prepared, mentally aware for what's happening right now. This podcast is going to be coming out on the day of your fight, so your opponent isn't going to have the time to see it realistically. So can you open up your heart a little bit and shed a little bit of inside information as to what you might be the most nervous about for this fight coming up?
Yeah, let's see, the nerves. The nerves, I think, for me, are a lot of the unknown, and I'm trying not to be nervous. I'm trying to stay focused, and I think that's where I rely a lot on having somebody like yourself as a coach, somebody who's done this, time and time again, and has the experience, anything you're saying to me, I'm kind of soaking up as a sponge and running with that. So that helps me a lot with the nerves. Again, I'm sure we're one week away from the fight, but as crunch time starts to be crunch time, that'll change a little bit. So again, I'll be leaning on you to help me with some of those nerves. But I think it's more or less just wanting to go in there and feel like I left it all in the cage, and that's kind of the nervous part for me, is the idea of like wanting to perform.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then letting the fight happen as it's going to happen, and just trying to combine those two things.
Letting the fight be the fight.
Yeah. So a little bit of the unknown, but also wanting to perform. So I'm kind of like a little bit of a tug of war. It makes you nervous.
Right. No, I completely understand. And, part of the reason why we've set up this program the way we have at OMA Combat Club is to help qualm some of that unknown and give you the security that somebody else knows it, so you can just relax and be you, and then everything else has been taken care of. And in my experience, that's kind of the biggest thing. It's the unknown. It's like, what are you nervous about? I don't know. I don't even know what to be nervous about.
What to be nervous about.
That's what makes me nervous. Is that I have no idea what to be nervous about. So the more you train with like qualified coaches, it does, like, I'm not just like ringing my own bell here. Any coach can do this for you. It's just the concept of knowing that your coach knows what to do is important, and that's why
it's major.
People go to like legitimate martial arts schools, legitimate fight camps. All that stuff is just to make sure that that you've legitimately prepared for this, and this isn't just something that like you strolled in off the street with a beer in your hand and you're like, oh man, they're having fights tonight.
Tonight's my night. Yep.
Let's make it happen. So we talked a lot about what's coming up in MMA, what's coming up for you personally, how you're feeling. Let's talk a little bit more about you personally. Like, what are the types of things that you enjoy outside of martial arts? And this is going to be discovery for me as well, because, as somebody who owns a martial arts school, like I see you guys, twice, 3 times a week, and you guys come in as martial artists and leave as martial artists. Yeah. But like, what are the things that you like to do outside of kicking and punching?
Yeah, great question. There's, this might sound like a little bit of a cliche or a cheesy answer here, but martial arts, and I guess UFC in general, is a hobby of mine. So I'm always staying up to date, watching fights every week as they come on. I collect UFC cards, and I've got like autographed memorabilia, stuff like that. But I'm also in the gym. I keep physical fitness a very important part of my life. But also culinary arts. Culinary arts is one of my major things. I started enjoying the art of culinary when I was really, really young, maybe 8, 9 years old. And even throughout intermediate school, middle school, I took TLC classes, right, which is like home ec classes. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up being the teacher's aide for the home ec class, and entering like chocolate chip cookie competitions.
Oh, fun.
And then even more so, I've worked in about 5 different restaurants professionally. I'm cooking a lot of times for all the family dinners, whether that be Thanksgiving, Christmas. So I spend a lot of time practicing culinary arts, which has made this weight cut even more difficult, right? I spread love by sharing food with others,
And now you're eating pickles.
And now, I'm eating freaking rice and eggs every day.
Oh man, that's so terrible. I had no idea how into it. So what if you had like a last meal, you're on death row, and you get to cook yourself one last meal, all expenses paid. What would that meal be for you?
That's such a hard one.
Would you do it yourself, or would you have somebody else's?
I think I would add in a couple things from somewhere else, and I would go all out. Like, I'm one of those guys that I'll go to a restaurant that I've never been to before and just order the entire appetizer meal. The whole thing, right? The whole slew of appetizers, and not get an entree so that I can taste everything.
You're a variety kind of guy, not like a meal kind of guy. Okay.
Yep. But if I'm cooking, I would say my number one thing, like if I died and went to heaven and then they were like, you know what, you've got to prove one thing that you've learned on earth that you can do to get in, I would cook a steak.
A steak?
Yeah,
Oh,
filet,
okay.
nice
Man, good
petite
steak.
filet, dude. And I get them from Mosita Market here in town, and they are farm to table, so they raise their own cattle.
Oh,
They
you're gonna
butcher
have to let
their
me
own
know
stuff.
more.
They sell it. Oh my gosh, it's unreal. So steak, probably like a McFlurry. You know,
Go,
from McDonald's.
McFlurry.
A quarter pounder with cheese.
All right, what type of McFlurry are you doing?
Oreo. All the
Oreo,
Extra
all the way.
Oreo. Yeah.
I'm a M&M minis guy myself.
Okay,
yeah, I'll hit
nice.
that M&M mini. Your daughters are you have 2 daughters, right?
Yeah.
And are they big foodies too? Do they like Dad's food, or is it kind of just like Dad does this all the time? It's normal for me.
Yeah, that's really what it ends up being. You know, I get so excited, even every meal for dinner. I put my heart and soul into this stuff, no kidding. And then I serve it to them, they're like, meh, this was okay. I'm like, you spoiled. You know?
You have no idea.
This is crazy, you know, but yeah, I think they do realize, you know, so in like school projects, they'll be like, oh, Mom helps me with all of these things, right? And she cares for me, she loves me, and then like Dad makes me food.
Yeah.
And then
Nice.
that's what it is.
What would you say is their favorite meal that you made? If they were on death row and Dad can make them one more meal, which one would they choose?
They're both different. I
Yeah?
think, yeah, very different in their appetites. My oldest one, 12, she is into the sugar.
Okay.
She likes the sugar. She likes the Dr. Peppers. She likes the sweets.
So it's gonna be a snack or a dessert.
It's going to be a
of some
snack
sort?
or
All right.
dessert. Yep. And then my younger one, she likes the vegetables and the fruits, and so
Oh,
she would probably choose like bacon, steak, and broccoli. Oddly enough, and she's only 5. You know.
Nice. Can you give me some insight from your past that informs who might be seen in that cage when they walk in? Like maybe we all want to be looked at as kind of like cool. Part of fighting is about finding that glory. That's part of being a prize fighter. What in your past informs the type of person that somebody might see in the cage this coming Saturday?
Yeah, you know, I think it's kind of a tough question to answer, but I've always put my 110% effort into everything that I do. Even just mowing the lawn as a 12-year-old kid for the neighbors, you know, I wanted it to look like the best lawn on the street. I've always put in the hard work and have wanted that to be an expression of myself, you know. So that's what I think people can expect in the cage, is that I will be in there and doing my damnedest to get this medal wrapped around my neck, you know.
No, I love it. I love it. You know, I think a lot in especially today's like contemporary or like internet culture, the concept of somebody trying hard for something or caring about something can sometimes feel like that. They'll call it a name. They call it a try hard, right? But I think you and I are similar in that respect, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna fucking do the thing. I'm going to try hard. Like,
Yeah.
I care about this, and that's what's fun about watching you train for this fight is that, you know, you're not treating it as if it's just like whatever. If it happens, it happens. Like, you're trying hard, and I think that's what most people can see out of you in that cage is like, you know, we can't control whether you win or lose, but we can control whether or not we care and whether or not we try.
Absolutely.
And when you come and see Damon the Demon for the first time this coming Saturday, Anderson, you know that he's going to come and have tried. He's going to put on that show. He's going to make it. It's important to him just as it is important to you. We talked a little bit about what might make you look cool in that cage, why people might want to see you. But obviously mistakes happen, blunders happen. What do you think is probably the most likely thing that's going to make you look dumb in this fight?
That's a tough question too. That's like one of those questions, like you're in an interview and they're like, "What are your greatest weaknesses?" You know, and you're like, "Well,
My greatest weaknesses is that I try too hard."
yeah,
Show up
exactly.
later.
My weaknesses are actually my positives because I learn from all of my mistakes."
Right.
Yeah, you know, I think something that might make me look dumb, you know, as crazy as it seems, just watching the pros in the UFC, you know, and fights that are highly anticipated, and then it's always like cool to see because you don't have a ton of investment in. I mean, you might really like a fighter, or you might hate a certain fighter, or whatever your position might be. But within like 10 seconds, there's either like a DQ or like a really quick finish. Like somebody gets poked in the eye or something like that, and then it's like, oh, fight's off. That would, for me, I'd feel like just a complete idiot. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we don't even get to fight. Or just that quick KO.
And especially being, like, responsible for that. Like, we talked a lot about...
Right, yeah, being that person who pokes somebody in the eye.
Right. We talk a lot in class about, like, making sure that because you're in MMA gloves, making sure that your hands are closed and not spread out or, like, pointed at people.
Right.
And you don't get that luxury, or you don't have to worry about that when you wear gloves all the time, right? Because the gloves secure everything. So I can understand that being like a very silly thing to lose out on in your first fight. If you like were just going out there for a high five and then like
hit him in the eye.
Him in the eye. Yeah. And it's DQ'd in the first 10 seconds. Nobody wins, nobody loses, except for the fans, except for your friends and family who spent a bunch of money to come and see you. I can completely understand that. And
or even, like walking out and like tripping and like hurting your ankle, and it's like a Family Guy moment. You're like, just something silly like that, that just the fight's off, and it'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, and it could entirely happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've never walked that walk before. You've never jumped out off of or gone from behind a curtain into a stage or whatever. It's like all of that's brand new, and when you get there for the first time, we are going to navigate that entire thing. Like, literally, we're going to go back there and everybody's going to be in the cage just moving around, and I'm going to tell you, let's get backstage. This is the walk you're going to take. This is where you're going to stand while the first fight's happening, and then this is where you're going to repost or hang out and wait for your song, and this is where you're going to stand. This is where the sparks are going to go off, and this is where I'm going to put your
perfect.
It's like everything. Yeah. We're gonna block this shit like a child actor in Hollywood.
That's why this guy, folks.
That's why we're here. We're going to block this shit. So we talked about the way you might be cool in the cage. We talked about your worries, your utmost fears about looking dumb in the cage. Let's get some predictions out here, right? Let's do some fighter stuff, and let's predict how this fight's going to go. How do you expect this fight to go?
Let's see here. So as far as expectations go, I've thought about this question a lot. I mean, even just before this podcast and, months prior, like, what do I expect out of this fight, and how do I expect it to go? I've learned now, after running all these scenarios through my head, that I'm not putting any expectations on this one. My expectation is to go out there and perform and do my very best and get the job done. You know what I mean? I'm leaving all the expectations up for everybody else. They've all seen some training videos. My team here has seen what I am capable of and what I can do, and I'm letting that work speak for itself. Again, I think it relates back to the fight's going to be the fight, so I'm not really expecting anything other than to get in there and kick some ass, dude. That's really what it boils down to, and I'm ready. So
I think that's a decent philosophy to have. Everybody goes in a fight differently, and I think we've talked about this personally, and we said it earlier in the podcast, where you kind of have to let the fight be the fight, right? I'm not a religious person personally, but when it comes to the fight, I sometimes it's helpful to think of things in terms of, like, there are fight gods, and they've already determined how this fight's going to go.
Right.
My job is just to go out there and be a vessel for this fight, and wherever the fight goes, I'm prepared, and I'm going to make it my fight either way.
Yep.
So that, I think that's a really good way to approach a fight. The fight's going to be the fight, and you're just the vessel for that happening.
And I've got, my mantras that I say, like, pain is temporary, right, but quitting isn't an option, so that's an expectation of mine, I guess you could say, and adapt and finish strong, those are expectations, but just hyping myself up, and like what you said, the fight's Let the fight gods do their thing.
Well, and a lot of people who don't fight or aren't preparing for a fight, or maybe even just train casually, you just kind of have to go in there with this expectation that it's gonna suck, it's gonna hurt, you're gonna get hit.
Yeah,
it's it's just you're not gonna go in there and just like fucking matrix this thing. You know what I mean? You're gonna get hit. It's gonna suck. It's gonna hurt. And as long as you have the mentality that you can embrace that suck, that uncomfortableness, you're gonna do just fine. You just got to make sure that there's no quitting you when you get on that chair mid round and you're bleeding from the nose, or your eye might be swelled up. This is what we signed up for.
Yep, exactly.
You're embracing that suck. You talked a lot about being like a UFC fan, a fight fan. There are a lot of other fans out there that might be watching you going along, and I'm wondering, what fighter do you think that you aim to emulate? Knowing your vast knowledge from that fandom, like if you were to, I'm not saying that you are this fighter or as good as this fighter. This is like our little internet disclaimer.
Yeah.
But if you have to say that like the type of fighter that I am or that I try to emulate is this person, who would that fighter
That's going to be a loaded question. And I have a lot of favorite fighters, right? And those kind of, they change, right? Every now and then. Of course, you've got your core ones, but then a couple other pop up. So I've definitely watched enough of this sport and enough film on each of these fighters. I'll watch the embedded shows, pre-fight. I'll watch post-fights. I'll watch interviews. I'll watch home life. I follow these people on Instagram. So there's a lot of fighters that I really take away from in a lot of ways. But when it comes to the styles, I think I mix things up, honestly. I really love Israel Adesanya. His striking is something, of
otherworldly.
I mean, it's crazy, right? And then Alex Pereira, the things that he's been able to do. He came from kickboxing and just destroying that world, and then jumping into MMA, training under Glover Teixeira, and then he's a 2-time MMA champion, and he just got put on the White House card as a heavyweight. So now he's going to go for 3 belts. Ilia Topuria, his head movement and his striking is just, again, it's world class. I look at Sean O'Malley for his feints. There's certain things that I pick up from individual fighters that I'm like, what, I would love, to look like this, or to train like this, or to have this in my repertoire.
So a little bit of a loaded question then, since you do have like this vast sort of annals of knowledge from just being a spectator and a fan. If somebody were to come on Saturday and watch Damon the Demon Anderson, which fighter do you think that they're going to be like, oh, this is who he reminds me of? I mean, you haven't fought yet, so you don't truly know.
I haven't seen my full style out there, but I could almost guarantee
never gone full tilt.
There's somebody out there I could copy and paste, like what I'm looking like. Oddly enough, I will be walking around. I kind of look like a bum right now, but when I've got my hair kind of done and my face shaved, weirdly enough, people are like, oh, you look like Michael Bisping.
I could see Bisping out of you,
yeah,
for sure.
Like the side profile or whatever it is. So I get that all the time, that I look like Michael Bisping.
Oh,
and oddly enough, like a little mix of like Diego Lopez in there, which is strange, but yeah. So
I used
maybe
to
that answers the question.
I used to get Dan Hardy all the time,
yeah,
especially when I had my mohawk on. I actually, like, one of my earlier Instagram handles was just not Dan Hardy. But like, you put me in a mohawk and send me to Vegas, everybody thinks I'm Dan Hardy.
Dude.
So come see not Michael Bisping fight next Saturday. Who would you say is your favorite fighter of all time?
Man,
you have to choose one. No cop-outs.
Sheesh. I don't want to just choose one.
He's like, I
want to choose like 5. Yeah.
What's your okay? Fine. What's your Mount Rushmore? How many people are on Mount Rushmore? Is that 5? I don't remember.
There's a few. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it draws back to the people that I try to include into my trainings. Maybe some of their combos, maybe some things like that. But I really like, I follow the sport and have for a long time, and I like the way that it adapts, and I like the players, or I guess the fighters now versus a little bit more of the old schools. Mm-hmm. Of course, you got your GSPs, and your TJ Dillashaws and things like that. Like, those were some incredible fighters. John Jones, I would have to put on my Mount Rushmore. Okay. Yep, John Jones is one of those. Alex Pereira, I think he's on his way to be a 3-belt champion, and just in the amount of time that he's been able to do it is crazy. So I think that's a very good fighter to have up on there. I know everybody's probably wanting me to say like Conor McGregor and Khabib, but nah, not for me. Nope. Israel Adesanya's up there.
For me, Khabib just quit. Like, I will say this out there. I'm sure probably people are going to get super mad at me for saying this, but like, I was like, oh gosh, a fighter that's never lost was a fighter that's never challenged. So like, I'm not that Khabib train.
He had like 3 really good, top notch, top quality fights, and then was like, okay, I'm retiring.
Yeah,
that was it. So, yep. But I think those 3 individuals are probably my favorite to watch right now. And Ilia Topuria is something to talk about too. And that's where I'd put my Mount Rushmore at the current moment.
Fair enough. So as we're going into fighting is a crazy thing for anybody to do, right? This idea that you want to go and get locked in the cage and have people chuck knucks at your snot locker is just the dumbest thing in the world.
Sure.
So what are your goals with this fight? Like, what are your goals with this fight? What are your goals with martial arts in general?
My goals, let's see. I think that's an interesting question too. My goals aren't quite laid out in front of me yet. I think, this fight specifically is what I'm focusing on. Mm-hmm. After we get this fight done with, I think that'll kind of broaden my horizons a bit on what I plan on doing next. I look at some of your credentials, some of these belts on the wall, and I'm like, man, it sure would be cool to have one of those. But I think this fight specifically is just what I'm focusing on now. However, I do believe it could open up some doors. I think, we've talked about this in the past. There are some folks that have academic black belts, right, and long history of whether that be jiu-jitsu or wrestling or judo, karate, but have never applied their skill set in an actual fight. And I think that can translate to a lot of things in life, in opportunities. I think it would be awesome to have whether a full-time or even like a part-time gig of helping somebody else, being in their corner, being able to train another individual or just help them, walk them through that, helping out in an MMA gym, whether that be like reffing a fight or judging some fights, just having that knowledge. And I think this could be a stepping stone to doing something like that, because as it is a passion of mine, the idea is love what you do and you never work a day in your life, right. So it's like, if I could incorporate some of that into what I'm doing in the future after this fight and after continuing my training, I think that would be a pinnacle.
I think that's awesome. When it comes to martial arts, there are people who just do them as hobbies, and that's completely okay, right? Or people who apply it just as a sport. But there are also people who kind of live a life as a martial artist, almost as if, somebody lives their life as like a Buddhist monk, Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an awesome sort of goal to have, of just like, I love this thing and I want this thing to be a part of my life. And I want to be able to give back in any way that I can to like the next generation,
Absolutely.
We have here at the martial arts school, we have kids that are in advanced class, 14, 15. We have our first black belt that's going to be doing like a fight eventually. And it is rewarding to be a part of that journey. When it comes to martial arts, it's just like a lifestyle of it.
Right. Yeah. It gives a little bit of a team element to such a personal sport. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right. It is such a personal journey, but like everybody around you is kind of helping you and pushing you along, and there's something religious about it that I can't. It's ineffable to me, but for it's so much fun and it's so rewarding to see other people do awesome in that sport.
I get that.
Martial arts permeates itself in so many different ways, in so many different realms in our lives, from like just watching it as a sport or participating in it in class for fitness. It's even in our entertainment spaces. So we'll end this with my standard question that I end all my interviews with. What's your favorite martial arts film? And I'll tell you if you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to be wrong in your eyes. I can almost guarantee it. Man, I hate this question. It's almost like, you know, I've probably answered all of these questions in the same manner. It's like walking up to the friggin' Coke machine, you know, the new ones. It's like the freestyle machine.
Right.
You have to select between like 300 different options of what friggin' soda am I going to drink today? But I think what resonates with me the most are boxing films, believe it or not.
Boxing films, okay.
Yeah. Something like, you know, $1 Million Baby or Cinderella Man. Even The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale. He won an Oscar for that film. And Ali, the Big George Foreman. Like those boxing films for me are what hit home the most, right? They tell an incredible story a lot of the time. And some of it's, you know, I mean, most of it's blood, sweat, and tears, you know, so I think it really hits home for me. Martial arts films, though, like cannot not mention, you know, some Kill Bill, some Mortal Kombat, and quite frankly, anything with Jackie Chan in it. Shanghai Noon, Karate Kid, Rush Hour. Yeah, these are good ones. But those boxing films for me are the top.
It feels like you're definitely the type of person who is more about the story and the journey in the film than it is about necessarily like the actual action,
the martial art itself. Yeah. Sure.
So like I can understand why you might choose like films that are about boxing, because usually those films are less about the actual fight and more about the person in
the fighter's mindset. Yeah, what it takes to be a fighter.
Oh, that's awesome.
And people win battles every day, not just in the cage, you know what I mean, or in the boxing ring, but yeah, it's about being that fighter through life.
Nice, perfect. Well, I think Damon, soon to be the Demon Anderson, you have been known based on this podcast. If you guys want to watch him fight, he is going to be fighting for the Steel Fist Fight Night fight card on March 14th. That's next week as of this recording. And you can get pay-per-view, online pay-per-view through blitz.tv. And you can see Damon the Demon dominate on March 14th.
Yep.
This has been The Fight Cherry. We will follow up with the post-fight clink. We'll talk about the fight about a week after the fight and have a drink together and talk about what happened. Hopefully it's ceremonial and not sad.
Yeah, winner's circle, man.
Winner's circle. All right. Once again, this has been The Fight Cherry. I am your host, Big Bang Michael Lasky. Damon the Demon Anderson. Have a good day.